Hey everyone, this is Gary House Cooking Everything Outdoors show. And today we're re-seasoning cast iron. Got a couple tired old Dutch ovens that need some help, and I'm going to show you how to do it right in the Cooking Everything Outdoors show. Gary House, the Outdoor Cook, Cooking Everything Outdoors show. I hope you try this at home. Now you can tell these Dutch ovens are somewhat neglected. They have what is called a blistering seasoning on it, and it's very similar to a house where the paint on the outside is blistering and chipping and peeling off. Just really never had a chance to adhere to it. There's probably some moisture in there that caused it to blister up, and then that blistering is what chips it. Luckily, I don't have any rust in these, and that would be a whole nother episode. But if there's any light rust, that would be pretty easy to get off with just a little steel wool pad. But what we're going to do to bring these back to brand new condition is completely strip any of the old seasoning off. The lids on these Dutch ovens, not a problem. They're really, really good shape. So I'm just going to do the two 12 inches that I have here. And in order to do that, we have to have really, really high heat. And that can only be done in a self-cleaning oven, because that bad boy is going to get up to 900 degrees and burn this old stuff off. Welcome to my oven. Hey, what we're going to do is I took out the baking racks, and then this is the bottom heavy-duty rack that stays at the bottom of my stove for whatever reason. I've lifted it up a couple notches, and then I'm going to take one, because my oven's not big enough to handle two, which I wish it did, but I'm going to take one of my Dutch ovens and place it upside down. And then what we're going to do is set this to self-clean for as long as the stove thinks it takes, which is probably about an hour. Now, once that starts, you can't open the lid or the door to your oven, which is good because then it's going to be safe. But when it turns itself off and unlocks, this cast iron is going to be screaming hot still. I mean, it'll let it cool down for a little bit. Don't touch it until it cools off. I'll show you what that looks like next. Depending on your oven, it could be as simple as select clean, two hours, and she starts. Hey. So I decided to do a couple extra Dutch ovens while I was at it. The first one I did was a 12-inch deep Dutch oven. And after doing that, I put in another 12-inch and a 10-inch just to double it up. And each one of them took about 2 hours to where the oven would self-clean, burn everything off, cool down, and unlock so I can get to them. This is actually the next day. I decided to wait because on the first one I found quite a surprise after it was all stripped off. So let's go take a look at these Dutch ovens and see how we did. Well, they have been cleaned in the self-cleaning oven, and I got just a wee bit of a surprise on really two of them. My 12-inch deep and my regular 12-inch are just filled with rust. It's not real bad rust, and I think most of it is surface rust. But it's absolutely coated on the inside of this Dutch oven. Now, what that tells me is that this wasn't dried properly when it was first seasoned. So we need to make sure we rectify that situation. Now, the first thing to do is to wash these out completely, outside and inside. I'm going to take a steel wool pad. I have a 3/0 steel wool pad. A 1/0 or 2/0 would work just fine, maybe even a little bit better. But I'm going to take these under the water, and I'm going to give them a good rinse and a good scrub. Then I'm going to let them dry completely, and then we'll take a look and see how well that rust came off. So I took these into the kitchen sink, and with warm water, I took basically a steel wool pad, and I just scrubbed them all out and did a really surprisingly good job of getting that surface rust out. But there's still some discoloration in here, and I really want to make sure that I get as much of this, if not all of this, out as humanly possible with the naked eye and without any testing. So what I'm going to do now is take a dry steel pad and a dry Dutch oven, and I'm going to just start working on these areas that are discolored to see if I can get even more of that rust, which it may not be rust, it might just be discoloration of the metal itself or some really deep seasoning in there. But I'm going to work at it for a little while and see if we can't get these looking as absolutely clean as possible, such as the outside of this Dutch oven looks. Well, I've been scrumming at these for a little while with dry not SOS, but dry steel wool pads, and I'm pretty comfortable saying that I've gotten all the rust out that I could possibly get out without going to more extreme steps like electrolysis, which is a whole different show in itself. But they're pretty darn good. I think some of the staining that's in the bottom of this is from the original oil casting of the cast iron, so I'm pretty comfortable saying that we're ready to rock and roll with seasoning. So let's talk about seasoning and what you can use for seasoning. You know, in the old days, what they did to season their cast iron was, you know, basically bear grease, if you will, or any type of lard or animal grease that they had available. Bacon grease was quite common for a long time. But I think you got to keep in mind with some of these greases that they used, or these lards, is that these Dutch ovens and cast iron skillets and pots and pans and stuff were used. I mean, that was the only implement they had, so it was used on a regular basis. And a lot of times these days when we use cast iron or Dutch ovens and such, we tend to set them aside and let them sit there for a little while. So what can happen if you use the wrong type of seasoning is that if it doesn't carbonize properly on there, it can build up and get rancid and sticky and gooey. In fact, when I first started seasoning my Dutch ovens years ago, I started out with vegetable oil. You know, I really didn't know that it probably wasn't the best thing to use, and it worked just fine. But after a while, my Dutch oven started getting sticky and gooey and a little built up. If you decide to use oil, I would stay away from, you know, your basic olive oils and such like that. They tend not to work very well from my experience. You can give it a try. There's a lot of hype out there right now for flaxseed oil being the perfect oil to season Dutch ovens with, because the polymerization process works really good and it carbonizes really well, and which it's really very similar to linseed oil, but it's expensive. You know, it's not in my price range. So over the years, what I've done is I've switched to two products, and I've been very successful with these. The first one is just basic old Crisco, all vegetable shortening. I really like this. I've had no problems with my Dutch ovens gumming up or going rancid on me. The other great item I use, and I'm going to use this today, is the Camp Chef cast iron conditioner. When we go to season our Dutch ovens, keep in mind that more is not better. And what I mean by that is more seasoning or more of the conditioner that you put on there is not better. You don't want so much on there that it just drips off. It really makes for a nasty coating. So it's a very light coating. And use a lint-free rag. I've used paper towels to fairly good success, but what happens is they start breaking down after a little while, and you get a bunch of lint from the paper towels in there, and that's not really attractive in a nicely seasoned Dutch oven. A t-shirt works really good, actually. So once you've folded your towel up to a nice little pad, let's take our conditioner and squeeze a little bit on there, and it looks really pretty darn close to like suntan oil lotion. And it is a gel, which is going to make it really nice and easy to coat and put on. So starting with our little Dutch oven here, we're just going to put it on lightly. Now this Dutch oven has been warmed up in the sun, and that makes a big difference when you're putting your seasoning on a warm Dutch oven. It's more likely to get pressed into the pores of the cast iron. So you can see what I'm doing is I took that little bit amount and I've virtually coated the whole inside surface, getting every little nick and cranny I can possibly get. And I've wiped it down so there's no buildup. I mean, this is a very, very light coating on there, and that's exactly what we want. You don't want a lot of seasoning on there. So I've coated 2 of my Dutch ovens with the Camp Chef cast iron conditioner. Now keep in mind, this is not just for Dutch ovens. This is for if you got cast iron skillet, got some cast iron pans and such, you want to do it. Re-season them completely and start out with a fresh coating of seasoning. This is basically the process that we're going through. Now I'm going to place these Dutch ovens in my 350-degree barbecue, and I want them upside down. And then what that does is it prevents any of the excess oils and stuff from pooling on the inside. So I have those placed in there just like that. It's as simple as that. Now I want to bake these at 350 degrees-ish. Could be 325, could be 375, but not too much more than that. 1 hour. So our hour's up, and let's take a look at our Dutch ovens. All right. It's got a little nice charcoal dark patina building up on there right now. It's our first coat. I want to turn my barbecue off. Or grill, whatever nomenclature you'd like to use. And then now these need to cool down, and that's probably going to take a good 30 to 40 minutes in order to cool down to where they're safe enough to pick up. Even right now, I don't want to pick these up with a hot pad or Dutch oven gloves because it's, I mean, they're screaming hot, so don't do that. We're going to let these cool off, and then we're going to put another coating on. So our Dutch ovens have now cooled off for about 30 minutes or so. They're still really hot. You know, get your Dutch oven gloves or a nice heavy towel and take them out so that we can put another coat on. Now, for the most part, our first seasoning is done really, really well. It's taken a nice even coating. It's consistent. It's not flaking in any way, but we need to build upon this. So the first one is really just kind of like maybe primer on a wall. So doing the same thing, we'll just take our original towel, shirt, whatever you've got, and just apply some more of the Camp Chef conditioner to it. Again, not so much that it is liquidy, but it's a nice thin coating. And we'll just do this to all surfaces of our Dutch oven again. And once we have that done, we're going to put it back in that barbecue grill for another hour. We're going to let it cool off, and we're going to do it again. I used to only do it 2 times, but I find it 3 times really, really makes the difference. It seems to get a nice permanent seasoning on there. And this Dutch oven's a little warm, but it's not so hot that I can't handle. And I'm just making sure to get all the surfaces. And you see that's a nice light coat in there. It's perfect for what we want. So we're done. It's been a long day doing this, and we started out with a couple Dutch ovens that looked pretty sad. They were chipping and flaking. We then put them in the oven and self-cleaning and cleaned those at about 900 degrees. Then we took them out, and lots of rust. So took them into the sink, washed them off. I scrubbed them all out, took them out, dried them. Then there was still a little bit more residue on there, so I took a dry steel wool pad and scrubbed out some more. Then washed it one more time, dried it thoroughly in the hot sun. Then I took the cast iron conditioner and coated the surfaces completely. Then I put it in the barbecue grill at 350 degrees for an hour, and I did that 3 times. And this is what we got. Just beautiful. These are still really, really hot, but they are just gorgeous charcoal black cast iron Dutch ovens, and which would work obviously for skillets and pans and pots and whatever you might have laying around. But these are just absolutely beautiful, and they're hot, but they're ready to be cooked with. So it's well worth the effort to take and do this with a Dutch oven or a skillet and such. And that's all there is to it. There's a little bit of labor involved, a little bit of time. I didn't stand by the barbecue all day. Went and did other things. So a lot of fun, had a good time. I hope you learned something. I hope you try this at home. Next time we do this, we're going to do electrolysis. And I think it's really cool, where we just transfer the rust from the pot to a copper rod. Pretty cool operation. I'll talk to you next time. This is Gary House, Cooking Everything Outdoors show. Make sure you stop and visit my sponsors, Island Grillstone and Camp Chef at OutdoorCooking.com. Really appreciate it. If you've got any ideas about or questions about this, leave them in the comments below. As you know, you can find me on iTunes, on cooking-outdoors.com, on YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter. See you around.